Good morning, and thank you for joining us for Think Time Tuesdays with today's focus on leadership and where the buck stops. First of all, I want to thank the AIA Los Angeles chapter staff, in particular, Corinne Erlingson, Carlo Caccavale, and Jessica Somali for setting this event up. And of course, Lisa Bockern, who co-created the event series with me and supports event production. So join me and my guests, Rob Zirkle, founder of Brick Inc., Cathy Merrill, founder of Merrill Morris Partners Landscape Architects, Michelle Gayle, founder of Spatializing, and Dong Kim, partner at DIALOG. Let me tell you a little bit more about myself. So my name is Elisabeth Sporer, and I work as a business strategist, a management consultant, and a leadership coach. Over the past 25 years or so, I have been part of about 40 firms as project lead, then part of the management teams, then the firm leadership teams, and now as a strategy consultant and owner of my architecture firms. My approach working with clients combines business strategy with leadership coaching. I'm a certified integral coach as well and a licensed architect. So if you want to know more about my thinking and how I deal and think about the industry, the architecture and design industry, please connect with me via LinkedIn, or you can sign up for my newsletters via my website, and there will be a link shown, or you can actually take it from the screen, or I will send it to you after the event again, so you can stay in touch. Now let me introduce my guests. So first is Rob Zirkle, founder of Brick Inc. in Oakland. Rob, you want to introduce yourself and your firm?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining, and thanks a lot, Elisabeth, for inviting me to attend. It's Elisabeth and I have known each other for a really long time. She used to be my project manager 20 or so years ago. She was the best in the office, so taught me a lot way back then. Applying those lessons now. We're a 26-person firm. I started the company in October of 2010, have grown it from me and my dining room table to a happy, thriving firm of 26 building projects all around the Bay Area. Our four major market sectors are commercial, office, and workplace, which is core and shell and interiors, life science, mostly core and shell, but some interiors, multifamily housing, and projects for higher education. We have about $450 million worth of hard construction going on right now, so we've enjoyed a good clip.
Welcome. Thank you for the introduction. Next up is Cathy Merrill, founder of Merrill Morris Partners Landscape Architect in San Francisco and Oakland. Cathy, why don't you tell us more about yourself and your firm?
Thank you. Well, the firm started early on, pretty much straight out of school. I'm a graduate of the College of Environmental Design at UC Berkeley. And my career is now going on nearly 40 years, I hate to say. However, we have covered this spectrum of the profession and a host of public and private clients throughout the state. So my portfolio presents a tremendous variety of project types, from a bus stop to a biotech campus. In the background behind me, you can see Kilroy Tech Campus. I have captured two primary market areas that have served us well, sort of a recession proofing and balance between public and private clients, and that is multifamily housing and transportation. Some of you may be familiar with one of our larger projects in Southern California, our 6 light rail stations designed for the LA Metro Gold extension. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Cathy. Welcome here. Next up will be Michelle Gayle, founder of Spatializing in Oakland. Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself and your firm?
Thank you so much, Elisabeth. It is really great to be here today. My firm is Spatializing, as Elisabeth said, and it was founded in 2016. So it's a relatively new firm, and we're pretty small. We're a team of about 3.5 people. My journey to founding Spatializing began over 23 years ago when I started working at EHDD Architecture, where I met Elisabeth. I worked at EHDD for 16 years, specializing in interior architecture for institutional and workplace projects like the Exploratorium, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and the project that you see pictured here, which is the David and Lucille Packard Foundation headquarters in Los Altos. I use this image of the David and Lucille Packard Foundation in my marketing materials because it represents my goals and aspirations for my client spaces. It embodies the connection to nature, wellness, and sustainability that I strive to bring to my clients' work as I help them to manage their spaces on an ongoing basis. So when I left EHDD, I went to UCLA Anderson for an MBA, go Bruins. And I founded Spatializing shortly afterward. We are not a typical design firm. I wanted to be able to provide ongoing support to my clients and have ongoing relationships to help them manage their facilities and continue to evolve their spaces. So we provide workplace strategy, interior design, and project management services for our workplace and higher ed clients, helping them with improvements throughout the life cycle of their buildings.
Well, thank you, Michelle. And now I introduce you to Dong Kim, partner at DIALOG in the Bay Area. Dong, why don't you talk about yourself and the firm?
Thank you, Elisabeth. Good morning, everyone. I am really glad to be here with a really awesome panelist and really fun to get to know LA community. This is the first time I'm really getting connected with you guys. I'm a partner at DIALOG. I am an architect, and we're actually a partnership of an integrated design practice, including structural, mechanical, landscape, and planners. And you're kind of wondering, who's DIALOG? And we're probably the biggest firm that you never even heard of. We actually have studios, 5 studios across North America, mostly in Canada. And recently, about 4 years ago, we opened shop in San Francisco Bay Area, and now we currently have a studio in San Francisco and Oakland. And the thing that we actually really do care about, which is our why on our screen, we pursue projects that have community benefits and then supporting the environment that we live in. And I wanted to kind of share with you how I became a partner in DIALOG, and looking forward to sharing experience with other panelists who are here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dong. So, and for those of you that followed my newsletters and wondered about the bear, bulldog, and lion in the topic, well, they are the athletic mascots of Cal, Yale, and Columbia University. And we also have a bruin on the team, as Michelle has mentioned on before. So Dong and Cathy are the bears, and Rob and Michelle are the bulldogs. I'm a lion, and Michelle is also a bruin on top of it. Moving on, I'll introduce you to the event series briefly. Let me run down what we are going to talk about today. I introduced you to the event series very briefly, my thinking about how firms are organized with the 4 pillars approach, what firm profiles prevail, and how firm structure and firm culture are intertwined. And then we go through the 4 case studies that will cover the topics of building teams, as well as improving overall performance of a small and mid-sized design firm, as well as leveraging niche services for mergers. And then at the end, we will have conversations with the audience. And we are all very much looking forward to that. So the 4 basics of brand, operations, finance, and designs, and the firm profiles of the entrepreneur, maverick, and legacy firm create a thread throughout the TTT series. I hope you will join me to explore the 4 topics of brand, what happened in February, operations today, finance in August, and design in November. And attendance will inspire and guide you to build or fine-tune your own business plan. So when it comes to firm profiles, the profiles of the entrepreneur, Maverick, and legacy firm have emerged based on my experience. The firm profiles are rooted in the founder's values. So the dots on this map indicate firms that I am and have been working with. The horizontal and vertical axis shows size as a number of staff, and the vertical one, years in existence since the firm was established. So the entrepreneurs are less than 20 years in existence, less than 20 employees. The Mavericks are less than 20 years in existence, more than 20 employees, and the legacy firms can be of any size, however, with more than 20 years in existence. And here are the firms that are on the panel today on the map. So Spatializing, an entrepreneur firm, for 3 to 4 employees, 5 years, less than 5 years in existence. Brick, 10 years in existence, 25 employees, definitely on the Maverick side. Merrill Morris, over 30 years in existence, about 12 employees currently, a legacy firm. And then DIALOG and BKDW, the firm that merged with DIALOG, definitely on the legacy side. If you want to know more about that, please follow my, you can also watch the previous recordings, which are shown on my website. There's a link in the chat right now that you can look at. So when looking at firm culture, I observed a strong correlation to the big questions of why, what, how, that a founder's values and mission and vision and their firm's business strategy are rooted in. So what is the relationship between a firm's internal structure and its external profile? How do the founder's values show in their firm's structure relative to flexibility and control? So I observed entrepreneurial cultures requiring that everybody is really good at everything. And there is the competitive culture that features and celebrates that only the best wins. The hierarchical culture honors each and everybody's role and responsibilities, so they're clearly defined, and it rewards exceeding expectations that are defined. Whereas the collaborative culture explores with flexibility, and everybody's roles and responsibilities are meant to seek unexpected innovations. So the rewards might be finding some new approaches that have never been done before. Let's go look a little bit more at the firm structure. So the very small firm with 1 to 4 staff allows all to be intimately involved in most aspects of the work. And the culture profile, which I show in the left corner, shows that it's most likely a hierarchical and entrepreneurial culture and clearly reflects the founder's values. The small firm with 5 to 15 employees will have some team leaders and, most importantly, added an administrative staff to the firm. And that can be a full-time staff. It can be also several part-time people that are consultants. So some formal structure and organization or delegation of roles and responsibilities shows at this point. And when you're staff in that kind of firm, you know what is going on by overhearing. Even in the remote world, you will know what's going on. So the firm culture can be collaborative, competitive, entrepreneurial, or hierarchical. And again, it's very closely linked to the founder or founders' values at this point. Then the medium-sized firm with 15 to 50 staff has defined clear team roles and responsibilities and has a small administrative staff. So a more defined form of firm organization, delegation, as well as hierarchy shows. The communication paths may not be direct with the principal or principals anymore. And the firm culture can be collaborative or hierarchical, may be competitive, but it's definitely not entrepreneurial at this point. The founder's values may or may not be clearly visible, as the next generation leaders have already joined the leadership team, and their values do show in the firm's kind of mission. And then the large firm with over 60 staff has established itself with a layered middle management level. So the career paths are on tracks to your technical, design, managerial, and like and your individual role on a team is clearly defined with responsibilities. An extensive administrative team supports the leaders and the teams, and communication is layered. You will know what is appropriate for your level only. The firm culture is hierarchical and most likely competitive, less likely collaborative or entrepreneurial. So with that said, I first welcome Rob Zirkle, founder of Brick, and we go to the conversations. So I met Rob about 20 years ago, like you mentioned, and when we both worked at Perkins & Will, and Rob has since built what I call a mid-sized maverick firm with 25 employees. So your firm went through the entrepreneurial phase within less than 10 years. And 3 years ago, we started working together again. So Rob, your firm's culture was then, we are one big family, we work in one big place, and we can do it all. I'm curious, what have you learned since, and how were you able to better focus and harness what I call the ready, aim, fire approach?
When we were doing prep, I made a joke about thanking you for not characterizing it as ready, fire, aim, which sometimes when you're starting a company, you kind of have to do in order to just get momentum. So I'd say that the single biggest transition point for us, which is exactly why we reconnected, was trying to figure out how to maintain the family-ness of an entrepreneurial setting, but evolve that into something that's got a little more structure. In order to be prepared for growth, you need to be able to execute on the things that you need to execute on. And as you mentioned, the personalities of larger firms, the higher you get in those numbers, the more difficult that is to maintain. So I think that the biggest shift we made in order to prepare for our next phase of growth, we were about 14, maybe 15 at the time that you and I first reconnected in 2017. The biggest investment we made at that time was a dedicated administrative support staff. So we were outsourcing everything at that point. That's finance, money management, marketing, all that stuff we had out of house, and we were using consultancies. And we made the decision at that point to invest in a full-time person to help manage the financial aspects of the firm, a full-time person to manage the communications, and a full-time person to help us manage the affairs of the office on a day-to-day basis, because those things are critical. That back office stuff is really critical in order to give enough time for the architects to do their work. So that really allowed us to hit the gas a little more.
So we talked a lot about the big family then, and you were very proud of that. And I think your staff just as much. That's why they had joined Brick and the flat organization. But when adding directors to support you in running the firm, it kind of, the structure is less flat. So how did that change the culture? What did you do about it?
Well, we conceived of a layered approach for a couple of reasons. One, to execute roles and responsibilities, but two, to create a clear path. If you were a person joining us right out of college and you wanted to know what it was going to take to become a partner in the organization, what was that path? We have a responsibility. I feel like I have a responsibility at this point to not only continue to grow and manage the affairs of the company, but also to help people build their careers in the way that they want to go. I'm 50 years old, so I want to pay it forward like those who paid it forward for me. And so part of that is to be able to give people avenues to grow. Now, that being said, you need to apply, and I'm speaking from experience and maybe not having taken every step correctly in this capacity, just to be fair. Any change, even if it's positive change, requires a healthy attitude about change management. So many people have loved the evolution of this. A few people who were more enamored with the flatness of our organization and the sort of more insular nature of the studio, a few of them struggled in this, to be fair. And I would say that my advice to someone in my situation and evolving into the situation is to spend more time nurturing those conversations among staff so that you can build consensus. We thought we did, but I think there was probably more time that was required in order to make it perfectly clear. That being said, $450 million of construction underway right now, we're pretty much humming on all cylinders, but overlaying a change like that recently and then a pandemic was probably a little more challenging year in 2020 than I had signed on for, but that comes with the territory.
So the 50 million are impressive. I mean, I understand you are the rainmaker in the firm. So how do you get that work? I'm sure a lot of people in the audience would like to know more about that.
Look, I don't have a trust fund, and I started my company in a recession. So I got to be real and just speak really plainly. If you're going to do that at the bottom, you got to hustle. You got to be on 24/7, 7 days a week. It's just what comes with the territory. You have to have a growth mindset and be willing to go places that you didn't know you could go in order to be able to maximize your opportunities. You need to be able to be persuasive and convincing, but then you got to deliver, right? All of those things do that. 85% of our business year over year is repeat business. So the biggest single thing you can do to grow a company is be really good at what you do as an architect, because those stable sources of revenue and those relationships, and all of my clients are people who I would have over for dinner with my family. And so if that's the standard by which I choose who I work with, then I'm less focused on exactly what market it's in, and I'm more focused on the individual. And so building those relationships and delivering on the work has been key there.
That's very good insight. I appreciate that. Thank you, Rob. I'm sure there will be more questions coming during the Q&A, so stay tuned. I will now.
Thanks.
Thank you so much again. I will now talk with Cathy Merrill. So Cathy founded her firm, Merrill Morris Partners, like she said, over 30 years ago, and she had the opportunity barely out of college to start her own firm with rather complex projects, and grew the firm to over 20 staff in a very short period of time. So your firm, Cathy, is an entrepreneurial legacy firm from my perspective. And when we met about 2 years ago to look closer at how to fill a leadership void in the firm, you mentioned that the last 10 to 15 years had great impact on your firm and at the A&D industry in general. So tell us a little more about that.
Well, it was an interesting time. With each decade, the firm had grown and weathered recessions and established a solid reputation. My partner was running the studio, and I was out front, the business development lead. Opportunities were abounding, and we were landing incredible career projects. We worked on the Warriors Stadium and continue with the Silicon Valley BART extension. We were a strong team and thought we had an organization built to last. However, things began to change. An active market attracted new young entrepreneurs, spin-offs from established firms, and they're tough to compete with. We also saw an increased trend in larger national firms merging and acquiring at times, unfortunately, businesses that had once been our prime consultants, our long-term return clients. And these conglomerates often somewhere in the country had landscape architecture, which corporate would press for using rather than the local and or smaller firms. We are a small women-owned business and DBE, but we had never really depended on it. As the competition became fierce, and even more so with the 2008 recession, we kind of entrenched a bit, far less pursuit of prime positions. We paid attention to those prime consultants that we pretty much felt embedded with. We were stable in our transportation work. It was almost embarrassing. We were hiring during the recession. But it didn't take long for the larger firms to figure out where the money was flowing. So coming out of the recession, there was a whole cadre of new characters in our market. But also, we were confronted with another rather jarring discovery, a new generation of clients. They were young, energetic, and wanted to work with people that looked and acted like them. And then to top it, the unexpected, devastating news that my partner was very ill and would probably have to retire. So I found myself with a technically competent, traditional legacy firm that was perhaps becoming outdated and had a waning culture. I was facing an ominous job of having to fill all shoes. I needed to hire. I needed to hire smart to fill the void. So I sought out Elisabeth to lay out a plan to restructure. We looked at what the leadership should be. We implemented forecasting, financial management tools, and launched a strategic hiring strategy. And that was really...
Yeah, I mean, we did a strategic plan early on and are gradually working through the strategic plan at this point. But I recall also we paid a lot of attention on how to engage the existing senior staff in the firm and activate their kind of commitment to the firm. I interviewed them all. You met with them individually a lot at that time. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, the cadre of characters. Over time, many of our very loyal staff had developed their place, well, let's say the cadre of characters. I knew them all professionally and on a social level, but having been away from the studio for some time, I needed to reacquaint with the staff and get up to speed on studio operations and, importantly, their client relationships. I'd been selling the team and a team portfolio that had just lost its leader. I needed to understand this group, this staff, strengths, their interests, goals, if this restructuring was going to be a success. I mean, we set out to interview staff, and I realized that what I needed to do was afford everyone the opportunity to counsel with Elisabeth. And she took them through a self-evaluation, looking at their individual career paths, and importantly, what they could contribute most significantly to the team. The interesting thing that came out of this was staff was looking forward to strong leadership, and a consensus was drawn to hire outside the studio for management. So, and then there was a second phase of regrouping, if you will, and establishing priorities for the firm. Again, working with staff, several initiatives came out of this process. The need for technological upgrades, an office cleanup, a fun layout, website, social media, all of the things that they saw their friends and colleagues doing. We were very busy, however, having implemented new procedures for project forecasting assisted us tremendously with projecting staffing needs and the timing of new hires. We were fortunate in this competitive environment for having recruited quality staff, I mean, all during pandemic, most sight unseen. And we were able to hire a studio director who melded. We promoted current staff to associate positions, taking advantage of their strengths and keeping them engaged with the firm. We've now hired 6 staff in the last year, entry level to the director, which means the firm grew by nearly 50% after the attrition. We meet regularly. We have upped the ante. We have a happy hour once a week. There's always an icebreaker question and lots of strong therapeutic laughter.
That's wonderful. I mean, I'm actually very happy to see that a lot has happened in the last year. And right now I see the firm is at a point where you got relief on the operation side and you're still seeking some relief on the business development side. So the last step of the whole strategic plan is still unfolding at this point with you hiring a marketing manager. What is did your role as a rainmaker change, or do you see it changing? Can you give us a very short glimpse on that?
Yes, well, it'll be a lot easier when the pandemic restrictions are lifted. Although I will say that the pandemic brought to light the realization that we needed to refresh to be competitive. In leaving the office, moving out of the office during the pandemic gave us an opportunity to do a wholesale cleanup. And I mean, we have a beautiful office, and I've been there for 31 years, and it's a lot more beautiful now. We needed to, part of marketing and being the rainmaker is being able to attract talent and having the facilities. We still have some work to do. First up is hiring a marketing manager to relieve me and let me back to business development and launching a website and social media.
That's wonderful. I mean, I'm really looking forward to that. And thank you so much to give us all those insights and being candid about it. I would like to introduce the audience and us now again to Michelle Gayle. So we move on to the third conversation. Michelle, we met about 13 years ago, and we gave some introduction how and when. So I don't want to go too deep into you, but you did an MBA at UCLA's School of Management since and started your own firm. And I know the study as an MBA has had a high impact on how you started your business and what you do. Last year, you asked me to help you add a staff member. Your firm is very entrepreneurial. The business model is unique. Your culture is indeed multicultural, as you are with some of your clients inside your firm and adapt to their culture. So what is the relationship between client service and team hiring? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Thank you, Elisabeth. Yes, for me, team hiring is a very important part of our client service and client relationships, specifically for one of my clients. As Elisabeth said, I work on site, and I was embedded in the facilities department of my client. And before the pandemic, I would sit on site with the facilities team 3 days a week. And also before the pandemic, my client asked me to hire on somebody who could provide additional support to them within the facilities department. I had hired 2 separate people on my own, and neither one of them lasted for longer than a year. It is a very difficult position to fill because it is one that had an administrative task component, some design task components, and the person also had to mesh really well with the client and their employees. So I decided to seek out Elisabeth's help with hiring. Even though this is a junior position, it's a very important position to me and to my company because it's an important part of the client service that I can provide. And when I worked with Elisabeth, when I worked with you, Elisabeth, at EHDD, I really enjoyed working with you on hiring. We hired some great people to join in administrative and interior design roles. And so I felt that you'd be a great fit to help me fill this difficult position. And it was our engagement was very successful. We ended up hiring 2 people, so I'll tell more about that.
But how was it growing a team during the pandemic? Was it easy? What were the challenges?
It was not easy to grow a team during the pandemic. It was quite stressful because the person who is currently working for me was not working out well. So I had to figure out how to let that person go during the pandemic while also looking for a replacement when I couldn't, meet people in person. And so you were really instrumental in helping me through that process. I was actually also on vacation in Yellowstone in an RV while you were vetting the candidates. So that was a great help to me because I was actually able to, enjoy my vacation, come back and have some fantastic candidates that I could interview. I interviewed, I think there were 5 people. And again, 2 of them were so strong that I hired both of them. And I was able to rethink the role. So I split it up into a person who's doing the administrative portion of the role and a person who is assisting me as a design assistant with all of my clients.
Wonderful. Is that so? Your business model changed basically based on the 2 hires to some extent?
To some extent, it did. I have such a strong team now. I'm a lot more motivated to grow my firm. I hadn't really been thinking about a clear growth path. And now that I have a good foundation with a team that I want to keep working with, I'm looking at putting into place all of the systems that Rob talked about so that we can market and grow our firm and bring on more clients that we can service.
Oh, well, thank you, Michelle. It's great to have you here as well. I would like to move on to the next conversation. So I'm reintroducing Dong Kim again. So Dong, you hired me 3.5 years ago after AIA East Bay's executive director introduced me to you. And you've gone through a major change in the last year alone, aside from the pandemic, as your 10-headed firm, legacy firm, indeed, merged with another firm, a legacy firm. And having spent a lot of time inside your office, I describe your firm's culture as collaborative and inclusive in nature, R&D focused, life outside and family matter a lot. This is a little bit in contradiction to what I said early on about large firms. So you are the R&D and collaborative firm, yet you are a big firm. Tell us your story.
Yeah, thanks, Elisabeth. And then, you know what? I'm going to come out and say, first of all, full transparency. I tried to hire Elisabeth full time. And she told me, you know what, Dong, I don't ever want to work with you under you, but by the way, I do consulting. Do you want to work with me? So the long story short, that's what happened. And it was really awesome to hear about, Rob, Cathy, and Michelle's experiences, because a lot of the things that I went through and I'm still currently going through as well. And being able to kind of connect and issues with the legacy firms and the maverick firms and entrepreneurial firm. I took over a legacy firm, which was established in 1979. I became a partner of that legacy firm in 2010. You guys all know what happened 2008 and 9 and 10, right? So that's kind of similar to Rob's story. Well, we were at the downturn, and then I was the young kid. And then interesting thing about me, so you guys get to hear about my sob story, is that I never really worked at any other firm other than the one that I worked in. Just single firm was my life. I started as an intern, kind of grew up in the ranks, got my license. In 2007, I lift my head up, and next thing you know, my partner, Dave Byron's asking me, hey, Don, you want to become a partner? Like, I didn't know better. I was like, you know what? I'm a young kid. Numbers look great. It's like, yeah, I'll become a partner. Let's go for it. Little did I know, a year later, the market tanks. And then we had a team of 8, 9. And then in 2010, we were down to 4 people. And then I had to make a decision with my partner. Do we make this a go or a no-go, right? Because the finances don't look good. I'm having challenges and I'm a young kid. But one thing I thought about myself is like, you know what? I really don't know anything else. And if I go look for somebody else, I'm going to run into the same problem. So I personally made a decision, say, you know what? I'm going to go. And we incorporated. I became a shareholder. And in 2011, a year later, times were so bad, my partner went off the payroll. I became a managing partner at a young 30-year-old and basically rolled up my sleeve and said, you know what? I need to figure something out. So how do I convert a legacy firm to well, it was a legacy firm, but also at the same time, I'm an entrepreneurial firm. I'm a young kid taking it over. I talk to my clients about it, and my client says, well, Dong, you're really good at what you're doing. Just continue doing. By the way, you can't really work on anything big. You're just going to work on small things, blah, blah, blah. You know what? It's kind of a sob story, long story short. However, in 5 years, I grew to 14, 15 people.
It's very
We
good.
start landing very fun projects. Although at the same time, I realized that I didn't have anything and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have the financial structure. I didn't have the back of the house operation. I didn't have a QA, QC processes. In my opinion, I think my documents kind of sucked. My clients told me, you know what, it's still better than other people, but also at the same time, I felt not good about it. And I felt like it was a house of cards that I was building up, right? If I didn't do one thing right, the whole thing would have just tumbled. And in 2016, financially, we had a gangbuster year. 2017, I put the brakes on everything. I hired Elisabeth, looked at the financial structure, looked at the marketing structure, looked at everything, and kind of had to figure out, okay, I grew opportunistically. I thought about our team, which really capable team, but also at the same time, I thought it was a little bit unfair for me to kind of let them driven by the wind. And I had to really figure out that what is that I wanted to do and realized that ultimately what mattered to me was the types of projects that I really like doing, which are the public projects that actually had public benefit. And then, yeah, some of you guys heard this story before. I'll share it. One of the best projects that I recently finished, East Oakland, we did a Rainbow Rec Center design. The director of the center is from Louisiana, New Orleans. And my best moment as an architect was when he coming back from Louisiana, brought me a bag of frozen shrimp. And that was my defining moment, realizing that, oh, these are the types of projects that I really wanted to work on.
You've been focusing your firm's values around community services quite a bit. And I understand even the choice of firm you merged with has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And this merger, I'm going to be honest with you, came out of nowhere. In 2019, I was working with Elisabeth. We're actually going through marketing, we're going through a website. And then one of the things that I only thing I regret being a part of DIALOG is the fact that we went through the branding process with Byron's Kim, and I don't get to use all that really awesome branding. And I'm going to share with you my business card that we could have had. You see this thing? It's actually laser cut with our logo, and then it would have been super awesome for us to keep this. However, I don't get to do that. But what I really liked about DIALOG and what I truly align with is our why. We are pushing for the design excellence. At Byron's Kim, we participated in competition. DIALOG, we're doing that. We really want to value our community. And although we're big, we're 600 plus people, we are actually very flat organizations. We run it in a fashion that it's very collaborative. And don't get me wrong, yes, there's a limit to what we can do because we're big and we do have to have some structure. But I like the fact that we are flat, we're collaborative, and we're actually research and development focused. All the things that I truly align with DIALOG. And therefore, this opportunity popped up out of the nowhere. And I was running marketing, like the branding of the Byron's Kim and then this thing at the same time. And it actually made sense to me to be part of this organization because ultimately it supported me and I'm going to be selfish and say it, it allowed me to do the things that I like doing, which is working on projects, chasing projects, and I still do deal with it, but don't have to much deal with all the finances, all the projections and all that stuff, and those structures are already set up, so that's awesome.
Good. I mean, that was my last question, but you already answered it. So wonderful. So you did find in a large firm basically the support that you had to piecemeal before that together and outsource. That's wonderful, and you can focus on your values, which is community services. Well, thank you so much for being very candid, everybody, Dong, Michelle, Cathy, and Rob. I hope that my audience as well appreciates that. I will wrap up the conversations with that and open up the Q&A. So please feel free to ask questions to either one of us via the chat line. The first questions I see is related to returning to the office, and where does your firm stand with in relationship to returning to the office policy, and how do you think it impacts your culture? I would like Michelle to take that question. Michelle, what do you think?
Thank you. It's a very challenging time right now, and it's a great question to be considering. I think a lot of firms don't know what to do, and they're looking for direction on this question. And everybody's in the same boat here. It's going to be trial and error. With my clients, I've been talking them through the process. We've been doing surveys with staff and looking for the right way forward for each of them based on their culture. And the conclusion is that listening to the staff is really important. Staff will leave because there's a lot of opportunity to work differently in other firms. So you have to take that into consideration with your decision about how you want to run your office going forward.
Interesting. Thank you. I have another question for you right after that. so keep your mic on.
Okay.
Why did you decide to get an MBA, and how did that change your view of the profession?
Oh boy. I decided to get an MBA because I had been working as a designer for 16 years at an architecture firm, a legacy firm, AHDD. And I had not had any business training or business exposure through my architectural education. And I felt like something was missing. I was looking at my career path going forward, and I felt like I needed to know more about business, because ultimately, as designers, we're working with clients that do know a lot about business. And I wanted to be able to communicate with my clients, speak their language, understand their needs from their perspective.
Thank you. And a question for Rob. Why did you decide to go on your own?
Well, for the same reason that everyone does, follow my path. No, I knew from day one that I wanted to have my own firm. I just have kind of more of an entrepreneurial kind of need to fill in my DNA, and so I was always of a mind to learn from the best people that I can learn from in doing the work with the firms that I was at, and just trying to pay attention to the things that worked really well, the things that didn't work really well, and at the right time, find the opportunity that would allow me to sort of coalesce all those things and grow. The biggest driver there is just to be closer to the decision-making with the clients, to help drive the marketing and design, branding, business structure. All these things are design problems for people who run firms to solve. And so I didn't realize that it would be a bottom of the market decision, to be fair. I thought that would be a little bit different, but honestly, being born when times are bad is actually a really good thing, because it teaches you this sort of self-reflection. You look in the mirror and you know what you're made of, I guess, in terms of the business development end and just the hustle and grit that's required in whatever entrepreneurial framework you're in, this profession or another. There's an element of that you got to really embrace and love, and be comfortable with failure, be comfortable with the unknown, and but betting on yourself to be successful.
Since I have you, you get another question already. You spoke about repeat business being the most effective means to new work, which is a great insight and absolutely true. In terms of finding work to establish these repeat clients with strong relationships, you alluded to needing to hustle. I'd love to hear more about the pipelines and methods that were actually part of this hustle. Was it simply happenstance meetings, or were there specific events, locations you frequented?
Wow, that's a long answer, so I'm gonna try to keep it as brief as possible. So what I recognized at the time that I wanted to launch, it was, statistically speaking, we were at the bottom of the curve. What I noticed is that, I'm going to use the term, old money was still in charge in terms of equity and investment in capital projects in real estate. There wasn't all these newly minted millionaires and billionaires that there are in the world now. And at that time, old money was being very conservative, and all of my peers, so let's say in my age range, plus or minus a few years, who were analysts, development managers, real estate brokers, whatever, they were all in the same boat that I was, which is they had to figure out a way to make a living in commercial real estate on their own terms. And so essentially what I did, there was about a dozen people that I just believed in enough that I would bet. And our exchange was, I'll help you, you help me. If you can pay me, great. If not, I'll get behind you and do that work for you. But if you get the deal, you got to hire me. That was the arrangement. So it was about a dozen people. Most of them went to Haas Business School. And that's essentially been the backbone of the firm's growth, is that sort of acknowledgement that we were sort of all in this together, that if we worked together, we could figure out a way forward. And then in the end, if you believe that collaboration between owner and architect client can work out, then you've got the basis for a long-standing friendship and relationship that fuels business. So it was just recognizing the point in the market where the money was controlled, who had the power to help try to unlock it, and then having a healthy fear that none of it would work out in trying to move it forward.
Good, thanks for that response. Question for Cathy. What does the future hold for landscape architects given the consolidations that happen in the industry?
Oh, well, I don't think landscape architecture is going anywhere. But and interestingly enough, over the 4 decades, there has been a trend of whether it be engineering firms or architectural firms hiring landscape architects in-house. And it's sad to say, they usually aren't the greatest profit center. And so slowly but surely they would dwindle back out. However, landscape architecture needs to build its presence and capture a place in the industry if they're to stand up. I mean, perfect example, our projects are dropping in the bucket compared to, say, an architectural or engineering project, both in terms of construction cost and fees. So at any given time, while an architect might have 10 projects going on, I'll have 30 or 40 active projects. And
in and out a little bit on the sound, Cathy. Would you pay attention to maybe getting closer to the mic?
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Oh, much better. Thank you.
Oh, you know what? I had my phone sitting near it. Anyway, so yeah, there needs to be a positioning and partnering with the architects, more and more demonstration of contribution to projects and general worth. While there have been all these mergers, the local firms, I think, ultimately respect the relationships. So being able to break through that corporate barrier that demands their internal use of people. But yeah, landscape's a different market than engineering and architecture. So it has to be broad, and it's hard to be everywhere all of the time and market a broad set of clients and project types.
I see. Thank you. Question for Dong. Now that you have the structure of a firm like DIALOG behind you that supports you and enables you to focus on what you want, what is your dream project and why?
Wow, that's a hard question. You're asking an architect for a single dream project. That's a tough one. As I mentioned to you, the projects that really engage me are the project that I feel like I had a say in the development of our community, right? I mean, I joke with my team that, it is all about the pretty picture. What is that pretty picture? I could talk to you for hours and hours about it. It is not the cover of the magazine, but I think it's the process, it's the collaboration, it's the relationship, it's the financial profit, all of those combine, and when a problem gets solved, and I think that is kind of I feel really great about. And building a relationship, ultimately, just like Rob noted, Cathy noted, you know what, I think our work is truly reflection on how we do our business and how do we build our relationship. And fortunately for me, for us, it was about 85% public market repeat, which has been awesome. But now as a bigger practice that we're actually pursuing larger, more significant projects. And I know that those projects are not dime a dozen and they're not necessarily a repeat. But being able to pursue larger scale project that actually could have potentially a catalyst for a neighborhood building or a community building, I think those will be the types of projects that will be my dream project, Elisabeth, if that makes sense to you.
Makes total sense to me. I mean, absolutely. That's a wonderful answer. Thank you. I will give you the last question. We have to keep it short. So how often do you sit down with each staff member to track their career progression and talk about advancement within the firm? Do you have clearly established criteria for advancement? Rob, you have the biggest firm in the crowd. I would ask you to answer on that.
The person that asked that question, a friend of mine, Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. I just put something in the group chat too that was brief, but so there's a few things that we do. First day of first act officially after our Monday morning staff meeting with any new employee, they sit down with me for 2 hours, and I take them through our culture, our values, our mission, what the firm progression is, where they start, where they can land, as a basis and a starting point. So I think that's actually an important thing. That welcome meeting really sets the tone about how things work, culturally and otherwise. On the other end of that, we have an annual performance review that we do that's essentially harvested from everyone's on their team's input based on our 8 company values and the behaviors that go along with those. So they're sort of, they get feedback on those. They also self-evaluate, and we just sort of talk that through. We also run a formal quarterly report where I give an update to everybody on the business, on the marketing, on the BD, and the financial performances of the firm. It's all pretty open book. And what we also try to do and need to be better at, frankly, and this is just how do you manage your time week to week, month to month, is quarterly check-ins with everybody as well, that are more informal. What I'm finding is that, especially with COVID, it's a little hard to enforce, but I think we should be better at it. And I would inspire everyone to really invest in those, particularly in a leadership position. You should be spending meaningful time weekly with someone in your firm, counseling, coaching, and helping mentor to the greatest extent you can. Don't let the work get in the way. I could be better at that. I think a lot of us could be better at that, but that's important to help people build their path.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I will wrap up this session today with that.